Welcome to another episode of Recap Ethiopia, the show where major events of the week in the country are summarized. The main story of this week's episode is the conflict that continues to unfold in the Tigray regional state of Ethiopia. An account of what has happened thus far will be given in this episode, despite a lack of information as a result of the phone and internet lockdown in the region. In addition to that, we will also see decisions by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia to reshuffle key political positions and their incumbents, as well as the outcome of the 2020 US elections and its implications in Ethiopia and the rest of the world. I'm Salam Abera, filling in for Wengil Tamene, and this is Recap Ethiopia. As the conflict between the federal and Tigray regional governments in the northern part of the country surges on, this week significant political figures within administration were reshuffled by decisions made by the Prime Minister of the country, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, as well as other federal and regional government authorities. Let us have a look briefly at those appointments and reshuffles that have taken place this week. The office of the Prime Minister of Ethiopia on Wednesday announced that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed had appointed Demeke Mekonnen, who had been serving as Deputy Prime Minister, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia. Demeke will continue to serve as the Deputy Prime Minister of the country, compounding his significance in the current Ethiopian political landscape. The former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Degu Andargacho, on the other hand, was appointed as the National Security Advisor of the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, following his departure from the Foreign Ministry of Ethiopia. Commissioner Demelash Gebre-Mikael was appointed as the Commissioner of the Federal Police of Ethiopia, while former President of the Amhara Regional State, Temesgen ጥሩነህ, was appointed as the Director of the National Information and Security Agency, INSA. In turn, Agenyo Teshaga replaced Temesgen ጥሩነህ to become the President of the Amhara Regional State, following approval by the Council of the Regional State. Another key appointment was the decision by the Prime Minister to appoint Lieutenant General Birhanu Jula as the Chief of Staff of the Ethiopian Military Forces. The former Deputy Chief of Staff of the military replaces General Adam Mohammed to become the Chief of Staff of the Ethiopian military. The new Chief of Staff has played key roles in the Ethiopian military, including high-ranking positions within the Central and Western Commands of the Ethiopian military in different times. The Lieutenant General had also previously served as the Force Commander of the United Nations Interim Security Force for Abiy between 2014 and 2016, as well as serving as the Sector of Commander for the UN missions in Liberia back in 2006. General Abebaw Taddese was also appointed as the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Ethiopian military. General Abebaw was among the 3 retired generals recalled into the military following the outbreak of the conflict in Tigray. In one of the most interesting US election races recently, former Vice President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. became the 46th President of the United States, denying 45th President Donald J. Trump a second term in office. It was announced on Saturday, November 7, 2020, that President-elect Joe Biden had won the presidency following his victory in the key state of Pennsylvania and its 20 electoral votes, taking the Democratic candidate's electoral vote count over the 270 benchmark necessary to win the presidency. The Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, was among the world leaders that congratulated the US President-elect Joe Biden following his victory over President Donald J. Trump. Well, the outcomes of the US presidential elections are not only the concern of Americans. On the contrary, the international community always pays attention because of the key role of the United States and its foreign policies in the global arena. Ethiopia is no exception. Many looked on in anticipation, especially after the controversial comments of President Donald Trump surrounding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam a few weeks ago. At the time, he had said Egypt could blow up the dam, which triggered an emotional response from the Ethiopian government, its citizens, and the diaspora. So is Biden any different? In an article written by Addis Zeybe titled "Biden or Trump? Why Ethiopians Should Pay Attention," Magdalawit Messai had said, "I don't think the result of the election would affect the negotiations substantively, but the tendency to make rash decisions by Trump could contribute to the negotiations being halted." Magdalawit also stressed that even though Biden might not offer significant shifts in the policies of the US when it comes to Ethiopia's mega dam, his political career and experience would at least contribute to the US becoming a more predictable actor in the matter. This seems to be the consensus when it comes to arguments made for Biden and against Trump. The 45th US president never set foot on the African continent, as opposed to President-elect Joe Biden, who featured decades of experience in foreign affairs, including in the African continent. This is the first important issue to note when it comes to the differences between Biden and Trump as leaders of the free world. temperament and experience in foreign policy. Capturing this very point in an article, Robin wrote for The New Yorker on November 11th, an expert on the US presidency at Rice University. Douglas Brinkley said, "Nobody has had the experience of foreign policy that Biden has had." In addition to his years of experience in the US foreign policy, which many see will make his presidency more popular in the global arena than domestically, Biden has also had key foreign policy commitments that may make US foreign policy and interaction distinct than the past 4 years. The most contextually important ones, especially in the Ethiopian context, is Biden's commitment to the global partnership, which is complemented by his first-hand understanding of the African political landscape, according to commentators, reflecting on his policies. Other well-known policy priorities of the president-elect are built around human rights and his approach towards authoritarian states. In an interview with the New York Times back in February 2020, Joe Biden had said, "When I'm president, human rights will be at the core of US foreign policy," responding to the situation in China in relation to the approach by the government in relation to Hong Kong and over 1 million Uyghur Muslims in relation to Western China. Trump, on the other hand, has been criticized for his relations with authoritarian states, featuring questionable human rights track records such as Saudi Arabia, North Korea, and Russia. Therefore, this is one of the issues to focus on as the human rights record of the country continues to deteriorate, especially following the outbreak of conflict in the country in the northern region. When it comes to the GERD, the election of the Democratic candidates in the 2020 US elections is expected to result in a more balanced role for the United States in the negotiations, mostly due to the years of experience in diplomacy, as well as the ability by the US presidential-elect to grasp geopolitical and security concerns surrounding the negotiations over the dam compared to his predecessor Donald J. Trump. However, many say that Biden himself has made immensely significant mistakes in relation to foreign policy during his tenure in the Senate and other roles within the American government. The New Yorker's Robin Wright mentioned some of these mistakes in his article, which include his vote against authorizing Operation Desert Storm in response to the invasion of Kuwait by Saddam Hussein's Iraq in 1991, as well as supporting the 2003 invasion of Iraq, which many believe were not commendable positions. Like the conclusions of Addis Zeybe's article back in August, there really isn't any evidence to suggest that the Biden approach towards GERD would benefit Ethiopia due to the dynamic and US interest-centered nature of the US foreign policy. However, many agree that an experienced diplomat in the White House, as opposed to Donald J. Trump, will improve the quality of the negotiations and the US competency as an unbiased mediator in the negotiations. The US direct or indirect involvement in the negotiations is expected to be higher in the coming times, especially after the decision by the Egyptians not to recognize the role of the African Union in the negotiations. However, there are those that suggest that because of clear indications that Biden will focus on Middle Eastern and Asian policies, the position taken by the president-elect might not continue to be biased due to the important geopolitical role of Egypt in the region. President Donald J. Trump's term is still not done. Regardless of the outcomes of the court proceedings, Trump still has around 10 weeks in office as President-elect Joe Biden is not expected to be sworn in until January 20, 2021. Political analysts say Trump could do a lot more to hamper the impact of the Biden's administration could have. Could this apply to the GERD negotiations as well? The next 10 weeks will tell. Wednesday, November 11, 2020, marked a week since the conflict between the federal and Tigray regional governments, starting on November 4. With communications obstructed in the Tigray since the onset of the conflict, not much is known about the situation on the ground, the status of more than 9 million people at risk in and around the region, and the casualties sustained by both warring sides. To date, informed about the conflict has been monopolized by the federal government, with exceptions like scattered press conferences by the TPLF, as well as reports by international organizations like the United Nations. For this reason, it has become increasingly difficult to present a complete story regarding the conflict. With this in mind, let us explore the situation in Tigray. Ambassador Redwan Hussein, the spokesperson to the State of Emergency Task Force, said during a briefing to the journalists that the lack of information mentioned above also applies to the Ethiopian government, as the decision to cut off communications was taken by the TPLF in the moments leading to the attack on the northern forces on November 4, 2020. The spokesperson said that TPLF will eventually open communication lines as the conflict develops, as it has been doing so whenever it seeks to communicate with the rest of the world. After nearly 2.5 years of passive-aggressive interactions between the Abiy administration and the TPLF-led Tigray regional state, the situation started to deteriorate following the decision by the Ethiopian government to postpone elections in June 2020. Tensions were compounded with the decision of the Tigray regional state to hold elections in defiance of the above decision, which it did on September 9, 2020. However, things quickly escalated in the beginning of November when the TPLF attacked the northern command of the Ethiopian military. In what was called by the Prime Minister as a treasonous act committed against a force committed to the security of the regional state for the past 2 decades, the TPLF later admitted to carrying out a coordinated attack against the command, both from within the command and using its regional state forces. Following this attack, the Prime Minister announced on November 4, 2020 that a military operation had begun in the region. Prior to his announcement, the TPLF was accused of having partaken in the killings of numerous ethnic Amharas in the Oromia regional state, including the attack in western Wallagga that claimed the lives of between 30 to 50 people, according to several sources. In the past week, the conflict in the Tigray region continued amid calls from regional and international communities for negotiations as opposed to armed conflict. Following the approval of the state of emergency by the House of People's Representatives on Friday, November 6, 2020, the task force introduced curfews in the Tigray regional state, restricting movement of persons as well as vehicles to only between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. in many parts of the Tigray regional state. To date, the conflict has had numerous developments, with both sides claiming to have defeated the other in several press conferences and statements. In an interview with Dimtz Weyane, the prominent figure within the TPLF, Getachew Reda, stated that the operation against the Tigray regional state had continued in the past week from all directions, including borders shared with the Amhara and Afar regional states. The TPLF spokesperson claimed in the same interview that claims by the Ethiopian military forces to have controlled key areas in the region did not accurately capture the development of the conflict in the northern region of the country, saying in war, you capture certain parts of the battlefield at one point and lose them in another time. This only shows the desperation by the Abiy administration to record victories. Getachew also said that the Tigray regional state will shoot down any fighter planes and the airports they deport from should the airstrikes in areas surrounding the capital Mekelle and other parts of the regional state happen. The TPLF official also claimed that parts of the Northern Command had aligned with the regional state to defend the claims of the regional state led by the TPLF. The newest Deputy Chief of Staff of the Ethiopian Military Forces, Lieutenant General Bacha Debele, however, disputed this claim following a trip to the Northern Command alongside compatriots, and recently recalled Military Chief Lieutenant General Abebo Tadesse, who was also recalled to duty after the conflict broke out. The Deputy Chief said to journalists that the Northern Command, with exception to a few, fully stands in alliance with the Ethiopian forces, despite alleged claims by TPLF officials of a significant portion of the command allying with the TPLF forces. The Lieutenant General said that because of efforts of the government for the past 2 years to make the military independent from any political party and vice versa, this played an integral role guaranteeing the above scenario does not unfold. However, the Deputy Chief also admitted that there was efforts to divert the Northern Command by the TPLF, despite their minimal success for such plans. In the statement, it said that the plan by the TPLF includes recruiting officials from within the command, attacking the command from outside with Tigray Special Forces, as well as sending elders to request for the Northern Command to ally with the region. The Deputy Chief said that one of the first steps was cutting communication lines in order to disrupt interactions between the military, also stating that the TPLF had taken prisoner key military personnel, including the head of the 20th Military Division, General Nuru, and other high-level military officials in the Northern Command. In regards to this, the Chief of Staff said that this was done because of the highly coordinated nature of the attack on communications. The Lieutenant General, however, reassured that despite attempts to force the Northern Command into surrender, the TPLF did not succeed in doing so. The president of the Tigray regional state called for the route of negotiation to be reconsidered by the Abiy Ahmed administration, continuing to criticize the federal government for involving the Eritrean forces in the conflict, as well as allowing the Isaias-led administration to infringe on the sovereignty of the country. However, there seems to be an adamance about the military action being taken by the federal government. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has repeatedly said that the TPLF had the opportunity to partake in dialogues with the federal government on several occasions since he assumed power in April 2018. The Chief of Staff of the military, Birhanu Jula, also said that before culprits within the TPLF are not apprehended, there will be no negotiations in a statement issued on Wednesday. The following day, on Thursday, November 12, 2020, the House of People's Representatives lifted the immunity of 39 members of the parliament, including Dr. Debretsion ገብረመስቀል, Getachew Reda, Abai Tsahaye, and Asmelash Waleselassie. The president of the Tigray regional state, Dr. Debretsion, on the other hand, reaffirmed the ability of the TPLF forces to face these alleged adversaries in the current conflict. Calls for negotiation and a peaceful solution to the conflict between the two parties has been railing in since the onset of the conflict roughly a week ago. The Pope of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis, the Commissioner of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mohammed, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, as well as the US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and the IGAD expressed their concern over the conflict in the region, highlighting the relevance of finding peaceful solutions to the conflict in the north. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed clearly responded to the above claim, saying that the operations were targeted against the criminals within the TPLF and that the party had decided to not pursue this route on many occasions in previous times. The UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights also asked that the federal government allow access for humanitarian agencies to provide support to the millions of people affected in the region. However, the conflict has already started to spill over to different civilian communities in Ethiopia. An alleged attack on over 500 ethnic Amharas in the Maikadra area, which is known for its mixed Amhara and Tigray population. The television outlet of the Amhara regional state, Amhara Mass Media Agency, stated that the TPLF has been behind the attacks in the region that claimed the lives of hundreds of civilians in Ethiopia. The agency stated that the TPLF forces had been forced into the Maikadra area by the Ethiopian military offensives, which also later cleared the forces from the region. According to the agency, however, the TPLF managed to execute the killings via its special forces and a group designated as Samra before being forced out of the Maikadra area. The director of the region's communication office, Gzacho Muluna, announced that a demonstration will be organized on Thursday, November 12, to show the actions on the TPLF in cities in the region including Bahar Dar, Enjibara, Fenote Salam, Dese, Debre Birhan, Debre Marcos, Kombolcha, and Debre Tabor. Gzacho invited all parties to join the demonstrations, guaranteeing security in the area, and the demonstrations are aimed at calling attention to the adverse crimes of the TPLF to the international community. At the time of filming this episode of Recap Ethiopia, it has been 8 days since the conflict broke out in the northern part of Ethiopia.